All right, episode 2 of chatting shit about the Labyrinth Cup. A bit of a special one because tonight we'll cover the 100th mon since I've started chatting shit, and I'm joined by people who I'm sure will do all 4 of them justice tonight. vTenacity, AzaryGeo, and Nesabethan. How are we, everyone?
Doing well, thank you.
Good.
Yeah. Cool. I think Leo as well. I think you were here for mon number 1 as well. I think you were on the first one. I can't quite remember. I think it was you, Aero.
The very first?
The very first, yeah. I think it was you and Aero Bubble and someone else, who I now feel awful for not remembering.
It was you, me, Aero Bubble, and the bald guy. I forget his name.
Phil or Dan?
Phil.
Yeah. There we go.
There's quite a few of them.
Sorry, there are. Yeah, sorry, Phil. Yeah, well, let's get into it. Ryan's going to start us off.
It weighs 507 pounds. It is Pokédex number 377. It is Reggie the Rock Johnson. Can you smell what the Rock is cooking? Because I can. It is, rank 6 on the PvP Poke list? Matt thinks it's a PvP Poke darling. I think 7. Oh, there you go. Getting things wrong again. Marowak. It beats Marowak in all even shields, and not just all even shields. It beats it even at a 2 shield disadvantage. So it is a wall because it's made of rock. It's also a hard counter to Galvantula, Alolan Ninetales, and Frostas, who might be common picks in this meta. And it can wipe out 75% of the meta in 0 shields, which makes it a pretty good safe switch. And speaking of safe switches, something crazy is with 2 lock-ons, was it, I think? It can beat Stunfisk in 0s. And you think Stunfisk is like a super hard counter to Regirock, but it's not if you've got a little bit of energy.
Unovian Sunfisk.
Yeah.
The electric one.
That's the one.
Yeah, Focus Blast is just a monstrous move in it. Yeah. Takes Reggie Vig as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, beats Vig in 1s and 0s, I think.
Does the Stunfisk fast move make a difference in the Regirock sim?
It might do.
Might do.
I did it with Thundershock.
Right.
Yeah, I think we'll see Thundershock once. Personally,
Oh,
go on.
What's its matchup against Reggie Steel? Because I was thinking of using Reggie Steel instead of Regirock.
I think it wins in one shield scenario because Focus Blast is stronger than Reggie Steel's.
But you can get to Flash Cannon sooner, so you can just.
Wouldn't be surprised if it's bait dependent.
Yeah,
Flash Cannon
is bait dependent.
Oh, it might be. Flash Cannon doesn't knock out, I don't think.
Yeah, sounds like a baity one to me.
Focus Blast and Flash Cannon do around the same damage. In fact, it's the exact same DPE.
Okay.
Over Reggie Steel.
Regirock wins 0s.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're taking some sort of advantage, but I guess that's the kind of thing where all the Reggies with lock on, if you don't win your matchup, there'll be a lot of matchups where you've done very little damage because of lock on. So I guess it's making sure that you don't end up in the two shield scenario with it, unless it's something that is happy to tank a Stone Edge, which I can't imagine there's a great deal about that does that.
And I think we're going to see a lot of teams that have multiple weaknesses to rock as well, because people want to use Galvantula, they want to use Mandibuzz, Marowak, possibly on the same team. So it's a core breaker in that sense.
Ninetales above us now.
Yeah. My first thought when I saw this was, Frostas and Zapdos. So certainly my first initial thinking was very weak to Regirock. Yeah, not at all concerned about the counter weakness then, because with Vigoroth being big, I mean, I know it'll take on Vigoroth fairly well, but we might see other counter users as well that are there to beat Vigoroth that aren't necessarily weak to Focus Blast.
Yeah, it doesn't want to see Hitmontop or Toxic Rogue whatsoever.
No.
Can't do anything to them.
I guess it's okay-ish versus Heracross and Blaziken with the Stone Edge being neutral, but
but
they're sort of fringe.
We don't worry about those.
We don't worry about
I
that.
reckon I wouldn't be
Don't worry about
surprised if.
I think regionals are banned, right?
No.
No.
Or is it
It
just
was-
Tropius that's banned?
Tropius
Tropius is
isn't banned.
eligible. Yeah, Tropius is eligible.
There were 16 picks that were
Right.
banned. And I think Tropius was one of them.
Yeah, Tropius is.
Yeah, Tropius, Heracross are both eligible.
Okay. No, I'm seeing more and more that I feel whoever, from just the way I've seen a lot of the pokes, and this is going to be like the safe switch meta, I feel whoever loses the lead and gets some sort of advantage on the switch, or whoever switches first essentially wins, because it's whoever gets that energy advantage on the switch. It feels like with like Regirock and other Pokemon that I'll be talking about later, and I mean Vigoroth is going to be like the safe switch as well, and getting those like extra counters is really huge. So it's going to be interesting how this meta will play out in the terms of the war of the safe switches, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess it's fair enough. We were talking about it. Fair enough. Stone Edge is faster than Venusaur fires off Frenzy Plants. Faster than Sableye fires off Foul Plays. Faster than
Really?
Comes out like lightning.
Yeah.
It's only
faster than-
55, so I guess you don't have to wait till
11 turns.
yeah.
Yeah.
And when
That's
you
quick
think
maths.
when you think of save swaps, well, certainly when I think of save swaps, things like Sableye, Venusaur, Frostlass, a lot comes to mind. So it's certainly, although it's a mon that I would imagine 99% of people have never used before, never even considered using before. It's certainly got the potential to do that save swapping well. And it's, I guess, like most save swaps, it's got a nice big coverage move that covers its resistance as well, doesn't it? Like anything
Do
that's,
you want the... Sorry, go on.
I was just to say anything that's resisting rock is likely to be at least, well, it's going to be, steels are going to be weak to find, aren't they? As we've said about Stunfisk, it's not going to enjoy Focus Blast. Nothing's going to enjoy Focus Blast. So
It can't take on Diggersby though, which is weird because it's weak to Focus Blast, but it doesn't want to see Diggersby.
no.
I guess Focus
tanky.
Blast is an inefficient amount of damage. It probably does like 60 or 70%, so you need to land a second anyway.
And the stab EQ will probably just knock it out instantly. So
Do you think we'll see much Diggersby?
I want to, but I find it hard to work onto a team.
I don't want to see.
I think it did look fairly popular. I think it was the second most popular normal type in trial tournaments, practice tournaments.
I mean, if you're using that, you're essentially giving up your Vigoroth and giving up, something
Wish Cash,
like
Stunfisk.
potentially like Wish Cash as well.
A lot of people are doing Politoed as their mud boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can run a mud boy and run Diggsby at the same time.
True.
It's not a mud.
It's all about balance.
It has mud shot and earthquake. So
No, that's not the definition.
He's having none of it. But on the Politoed sort of note, it's a single typing as well, Regirock, so it's not like you're restricting yourself by and taking the typing off the board, which is quite a nice.
Rock is a really bad type in this anyway. I think there's not many really good rocks in this. I don't think.
Defensively, it's really bad.
Yeah, but it's not.
Including-
Second or third worst defensive typing or something.
I mean, there's Cradily, but who would use that?
Yeah,
So-
you have to be a madman to use Cradily.
Excuse me. What's wrong with Cradily?
Do you want the small list of things that Regirock takes a shield from if you use it as a switch?
Go on then.
Or doesn't take a shield or switch from? Diggersby, Hitmontop, Chestnut, Venusaur, Whiscash, Politoed, and Toxicroak. So if you don't have any of those, then Reggie's going to rock your world.
Taking a shield or switch. Fair. Fair.
So was it? You said it was Diggersby, Toxicroak, and Wishcash. I think those Hitmontop. Those are going to be like the common ones, I'd say. The more common, uncommon Pokemon, so to speak. Well, we don't really know, but I feel Diggersby is going to be rare, and Wishcash will be quite semi-common.
I think Venusaur is probably the big one to watch out for there if you're a Regirock player.
It loses to Venusaur, right? Surely.
Yeah, even with a little lock-on energy, can't beat Venusaur.
Yeah, I guess it can tank a Stone Age, but it can't tank a Frenzy Plant. So I guess it straight up loses to any grass type then, as well.
Well, it can take Tropius and Ferrothorn.
Yeah, Ferrothorn.
What's the Abomasnow matchup like? It probably beats Abomasnow.
It loses 2s to Abomasnow, but
It
it
loses
can
2.
win 1s and 0s.
Does Abomasnow need to bait in 2s? Because presumably the Stone Age is
Possibly.
faster than that.
Yeah, possibly.
What about, say, other water types that isn't Wishcash, like Politoed?
It can't do anything to Politoed, really.
Okay.
But it's probably winning. It's probably winning 0.
That's the one thing I really dislike about rock types. It just has 5 weaknesses. It's weak to fighting. It's weak to water. It's weak to grass. It's weak to steel, and it's weak to something else. I think it was 5.
Ground? Did you say ground?
That's the one.
Yeah.
I didn't say ground. So it's weak to a lot of things.
But what's a weakness when you fire enough Stone Edges in 11 turns, or Focus Blast in however many turns that is? 15. You know, like it's got the moves to hit things
Hard, yeah.
Yeah.
And it has the bulk to take some super effective hits.
Yeah.
It can take on Jellicent.
Yeah.
Do a little bit of
Take
damage.
Jellicent. I guess that makes sense because Jellicent's
Doesn't have a hard
bubble beams
water
is
moves.
very super effective. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Jellicent's gonna be rare though.
You've slowly been winning me round to Regirock. I'm not gonna lie. When I was sort of first building my first draft of the team, I ended up with Probo Pass on it, which in the few practice battles I've done has been a complete liability. And actually, Regirock does the things I want Probo to do, sort of equally well, really. If not slightly worse versus the Charmers, but I've got 2 Charm counters there already. But crucially, it's that versatility versus things like the Stunfisk, like versus the Wishcash, where fine, I'm still going to lose, but I'm going to take 70%, well, maybe not, maybe 50% off with a Focus Blast on my way out. Whereas what's Probo Blast doing?
It feels like a meme mon, doesn't it?
Mm.
And it is, but it's good here.
Yeah, I think it's got some play. Well, Leo's picked a rock type as well, and we've already sort of mentioned it a little bit. Try to tell us a bit about it.
Don't appreciate the shade getting thrown at my boy Credilli here. Well, I've been using Credilli since Catacomb Cup, and it's essentially the same thing. Like when you switch it out, I remember every team had the same 5 Pokemon in Catacomb. Everyone had Umbreon, Lapras, Venusaur, Sudowoodo, and some sort of bee, right? And Credilli essentially beats all of those Pokemon on the Switch in like even shields, including the Umbreon with that energy advantage. Now with the the game being broken with moves getting extra moves getting thrown on charge moves, it's not great. It can go either way, but it's essentially the same thing as well. I even used a team in Holiday Cup in GBL using Credilli as a safe switch. Pretty much beats all the Obstagoon and Vigoroth in a 2 shields just because of that stab, Grass Knot, and stab Stone Edge. And so it has a lot of coverage, including Marowak as well. You can just go straight Stone Edge and you'll kill it in the zeros. So you're always basically gonna get a shield, and you could either like, depending on the situation, you need to really like I can't remember like. But obviously, you can't win Vigoroth in the shields, so you take the 0 shield. You just go for the 0 shield, you take a shield. Because of the counters are still going to hurt you, but you can survive a Bulldoze, and the body slams aren't going to do much. Whereas something for Marowak, you take kind of everything neutral, so you can take, if you really want switch, you can definitely like go for it. Or you can just, take the shield advantage as well. And yeah, it's very solid. Similar to Regirock, forcing shields, except it's quite interesting because Regirock beats the flyers, all the flyers, whereas what's his face, Credilli will probably struggle against Skarmory. In fact, it will. It can't beat it in the even shields. On one occasion in GBL, I did manage to win against the Skarmory because it got greedy and I killed it in the 2 shields because it tried to farm me down and I got another Stone Edge. But it might be because of my IVs. But it's going to struggle against Toxicroak because there's nothing, it resists everything. It's going to struggle against Skarmory and probably like pure steel types like Melmetal and Registeel, but everything other than that, it'll take shields because it's got Stab Grass and Stab Rock moves, Stone Edge and Grass Knot. So very dangerous. And I think as well, a lot of people have no idea what to do when they see Credilli. I think that's happened before. Like I've gotten like Stunfisk, Unovian Stunfisk thrown, like switching in. It's like, oh, I don't. It's rock. Let me just, yeah. So it does make it forces people to make mistakes as well. So it has that going for it too. So yeah, I'll probably definitely use a couple of teams with Credilli, and yeah, maybe 1 or 2 with Regirock as well.
I think you've done it a slight disservice there. You've talked about what it's lost, what it loses to, like in terms of the flyers that Regirock doesn't. But what's worth noting is that the water types.
The water types that Regirock loses to. So essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Because especially like it'll definitely one-shot Wishcash, and it'll probably do like 80 to 90% off like Politoed or maybe
Stunfisk as well.
And I think Stone Edge does like 90% to Lapras, and like Grass Knot does like about 80-70, so it's very, very strong. And it is obviously weak to ice types, but with the energy advantage, I think for example against Frostlass, I think you can tank an Avalanche, but it can't tank a Stone Edge, for example. So Credilli is really bulky, so that helps it as well. So yeah, it's very good.
On the Marowak matchup, I used it briefly in Marsh Cup. I remember because the Bullet Seed chip is very small in Marowak, and I think the Stone Edge does like 3/4. I remember it being an inefficient amount of damage. You often had to, unless it had already been chipped before,
You need 2 moves, yeah,
Power
for
Whip
sure.
afterwards. Which was slightly frustrating because they could tank it and then you still have to get to the other move afterwards. And all of Credilli's moves are not that cheap. Like it has a fast charging move, but it was a bit annoying having to throw a Power Whip after it.
Yeah, you need about like 5 Bullet Seeds, 4 or 5 to get to the first move. But everyone using Shadow Bone instead of Shadow Ball now, so it's actually kind of better for Credilli unless you get the drop. So it can easily tank 2 Shadow Bones unless it gets the death drop on the first one. And because they charge at the same pace, 5 and 4, I think it's about the same. It might be like one Bullet Seeds more for the Stone Edge because it's a bit more. It's 55 energy rather than 50 for the Energy Ball. But I feel you're always against Marowak, you're always gonna like force a shield in that scenario. Yeah, I mean
No, go on.
I think the Marowak, if you do shield, like if you, for example, if you're like I need to win switch here and you just shield all the moves and you get like Bone Club baited, I think you'll lose. But a lot of the time they just throw Bone Club very early on and I don't shield, and then it puts them in a worse spot, forcing them to like having to use more shields. So I feel Credilli has the kind of advantage in most scenarios against Marowak.
And a lot of Marowak players aren't really prepared to, particularly because they probably haven't played Credilli that often, they're not prepared to tank a Stone Edge.
Exactly, yeah.
So obviously it's got the grass type, so that would rule you out of running another grass type. Personally, I'm always a big fan of Venusaur whenever it's allowed. There's no other grass types that might potentially make you think twice about Credilli.
I mean, if I do use Venusaur, I'll probably try the Regirock Tenacity mentioned. And Venusaur is very consistent, but I think I've like I remember playing against Venusaurs in Catacomb as well, and Holiday too. I'm not sure if it was allowed there, but a lot of the time they just throw like Sludge Bomb as well. Like a lot of people just don't know what they're doing, which is I think the really like nice thing I like about Credilli. But yeah, I think Venusaur pretty much beats it in all scenarios. Wait, let me check the rank 1. Yeah, it always loses. But yeah, I do remember sometimes getting a shield or two off. It does about 55% to Venusaur. And the frenzy plant does less. But it is yeah, the frenzy plant does like 45% to Credilli.
I guess Venusaur gets the advantage because it charges faster and it does more fast move damage.
That speaks to the bulk of Credilli though. Like a neutral stat.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
doing less than half, isn't it? That's it's a good way to measure how bulky it is.
It's got like 20% HP more than the Venusaur, and quite a bit more defense.
Product is like 20% higher or something.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Cool. Yeah. Any further thoughts, like Ryan? Any comeback on the Credilli?
The only misgivings I have about it is that it's really good with an energy advantage, but you need to get there first. And in this meta, Credilli is not very good with 2 shields up. So you need to force something out, but there's not many things it can force out. So I feel like it might be a bit difficult to use as a safe swap.
I mean, I think most of the time you're gonna force out Vigoroth for sure. I think when people see Credilli, they'll be like, rock type. They'll force out their Vigoroth and get that out the way.
So rather than switching something out because they're scared of it, they'll switch something in because they think it beats it better, sort of thing.
Or did you mean scare out Vigoroth from the lead?
Oh no, I wouldn't switch a Credilli into a Vigoroth.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering then.
Yeah.
Oh, like like to scare or something. Yeah, I mean, in that case, I'd probably like leave something that's weak to water or weak to fire. Like I would probably switch it into a Marowak, even though that's probably like a mistake, but just to be like aggressive. But I would easily switch it into like water types and flyers for sure.
And I guess Politoed's a really nice lead as well, isn't it? So teams that have got Politoed, it feels to me like, I mean, obviously it's a bit team dependent as well, of course, but it feels to me like if I see a Politoed, if it's not in the lead, I'm kind of always thinking it's unlikely to be in the back, just because personally, my experience of playing against it is that I struggle with it more when it's in the lead. So yeah, if that's a common thing, yeah. I don't know.
But I feel when like I mentioned about the whole losing this whole safe switch meta, I think you want to like almost build your team in a way that you actually want to lose the lead, because if you win the lead and then they switch something in, then your safe switch Pokemon that excel with an energy advantage immediately aren't going to do as well if you like switch them in on their switch. So you always kind of like want to lose the lead in a really weird way.
No, fair. I know exactly what you mean. That was how I played Rose Cup, really, to be fair. And to a lesser extent Nightfall, so I don't know exactly what you mean. Yeah, I hadn't really thought of it that way yet, to be honest.
I guess when you're trying to farm down something in small health, you want it to be set up in a situation where it doesn't have much energy and it doesn't have good coverage against either doesn't have much energy or it doesn't have good coverage, because if they win the lead and then they take out 2/3 of your next Pokemon, then you might have that situation.
Yeah, you can't really farm anything down with Credilli, unfortunately. It's not very good unless it's a
Whiscash,
double super effective. Whiscash.
Yeah, and with something like Credilli, and there's a few other Pokemon like it as well. I guess the Regis with Alolan Muck to some extent. When your fast move doesn't do much damage and your cheapest charge move is at least 50 energy, you have to waste quite a lot of energy just to finish off something.
Yeah, that's
can be inefficient.
That can be annoying for sure. I usually just throw the energy ball, even if it's like resisted, just to worst case scenario it doesn't kill, and then I bullet seed it down as well. But but Credilli's tanky, so I think you can afford to be inefficient, so to speak.
Well, my pick is it's changed sort of 20 minutes before we started recording, and my pick is number 149, 48. That's not quite right. No. Anyway.
Pokédex or PvP?
Pokédex.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, Dan. Yeah, it's Dragonair.
100. Oh, okay.
Well, it's because I did Zapdos the other night, and that was 145. So I thought maybe I'd be able to work it out on the fly, but I can't count apparently. So which checks out. So yeah. So yeah, Dragonair. I was initially going to do Latias because of the psychic subtyping. Because I think dragon typing is really interesting here. I think we'll see a lot of teams that end up with a fire, a water, a grass, and an electric with the fighting type user, which is what initially drew me to the Latios. Latios has Dragon Claw, but it's very difficult to get one below 1500 CP. Latias doesn't have Dragon Claw, and so it's awful in the one shield scenario, which is makes it very restrictive in how you play it. Dragonair is somewhere in between and still does the same job. So based just on those fire, electric, grass, water matchups, which is what you want a dragon for, really. It beats Stunfisk at a shield disadvantage, a one shield disadvantage that is, because of the Aqua Tails, and it makes Stunfisk rely on discharges, which is it's spammy, but it's a pretty poor move, really, in terms of DPE. Not discharge, mud bomb, sorry. Discharge is the good one, isn't it? So it beats Stunfisk at a one shield disadvantage. It beats Zapdos and Galvantula in the even shields and at a 1-2 shield disadvantage as well. It beats Marowak, Ninetales, and Victini in all even shields, which I think are probably the more common fires you're likely to see. Victini. I'm pushing the boat. I'm pushing the boat there. Like, I feel like if you want to confuse...
Common fire types.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
It'll probably be Ninetales, which is more common than I thought.
Yeah, but it takes that one as well. So it was worth throwing Victini in because it's not doing resisted damage, because the confusions are sort of neutral. But Aqua Tail's still doing the job there. It beats Venusaur in all even shields, which is and that's no baiting, because I think it can go Dragon Pulse to begin with, and then if it shields that, the Dragon Breaths and the Aqua Tails are enough, I believe. Ferrothorn's an issue, so that's something to worry about a little bit. And then the water types are a bit of a problem as well because they're resisting Aqua Tail. So things like Jellicent and Politoed, they're kind of bait dependent on both sides, but the balls in their court, really, they've got to decide to bait. It's sort of safer for you. You're going to win the twos more often than not. Beat Pelipper in all even shields. And then in terms of the counter user, or certainly Vigoroth is sort of the one that I guess people benchmark. You beat Vigoroth in the zeros with the Dragon Pulse. It's a very close loss in the ones. And if you want to run the Shadow Dragonair, which personally I don't, I think Dragonair's good here because of its typing and its resistances, so I want as much bulk as I can. But if you do want the Shadow Dragonair, you pick up Vigoroth in the twos as well. Which is interesting because that's generally how Vigoroth plays. Certainly in my experience, Vigoroth likes shielding twice and trying to take switch advantage. So
that is quite interesting. I'm guessing there's a breakpoint behind that. That would be my most likely explanation. The Dragon Breath does a disproportionate amount of damage or something.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I looked into it a great deal. I decided 10 minutes before we recorded that I was going to change because, I mean, I don't think Latias is awful. I think it's like number 255 on the ranking list.
That sounds awful.
It sounds awful, but it's only a tad less bulky than Kingdra, and it plays similarly. I think it's a good comparison with Kingdra. Like if you want to two shield something, and
I don't know, Octacuza is quite like busted, which is why that
there is
Pokemon
that.
is so viable. So
But yeah, it's fairly comparable to Kingdra in how it plays. I don't think it's awful, but certainly I think Dragonair is better. And I don't see the psychic typing's nice for the counter resistance, but the extra spam you get on Dragonair kind of makes up for that, really.
it'll lose the Swilus, right?
Yeah, I would have
Given
thought it would lose
this
the Swilus.
Aqua Tail and
Yeah.
not Body Slam, yeah.
But that was an interesting one. Why I looked at the Dragons, because Violet is really high up on the Silph rankings, and I thought, despite there being loads of counter users, well, not loads, Figure-Off's going to be on a lot of teams. So there will be. I would suggest that most teams that don't have Vigoroth will probably have another counter user instead. By taking Xylus, you're not able to run Sableye or Mandibores or Alolan Mutt, which are always popular picks. So I feel like Xylus is difficult to run, but obviously it must have things going for it if it's that high up the rankings.
Yeah, if it's ranked 4th, yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like Dragonair sort of picks out most of the good points of Xylus without being weak to counter and without taking the dark pick.
Yeah, I suppose it's a good budget Swilus. If you're team building wise, it's a good budget Swilus.
Yeah, the single
But
type.
that's another. But you raise a good point there, because I was actually thinking, and this was before I even looked at the rules. Right, I was like looking at the top Pokemon. Oh no, Lickitung XL, Diggersby XL. Oh no, I don't have these Pokemon. But then I read the rules. It's like, oh, one type each. Okay, that's okay. This makes sense. But yeah, you were saying like the top 7-8 Pokemon are all weak to counter, which is kind of insane. Which means like everyone's gonna run, at least one. I'm actually thinking of running 2 just for that fact. But I think it's just that all the Pokemon just so happen to be good. But it just means you're only going to pick 1 or 2 of those, and not like, oh, I'll take Vigoroth, Swilus, Registeel, and Regirock, sure, because then your team's just entirely weak to counter, even though you could legally do that. But does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely not one of those metas where something like
Catacombs, where like the top 7, you just like, oh, I'll take Venusaur, I'll take Lapras, I'll take Sudowoodo. It's yeah,
I was going to say Forest, sort of, which has a similar thing, but yeah, Catacombs is probably a better example. Yeah, certainly not one of those. As I say, there were quite a large number of hours, more hours than I'm care to admit, where I was really, really happy about Latias at number 255. So it's certainly not one of those cups. Yeah.
You sound like you have a Latias double moved. I'm just gonna throw that.
No,
one
I haven't.
Oh, okay.
Desperate to use it, just
Desperate to
invested in it a long time ago.
I did use it in a practice the other day, and I lost because the single move was outraged, not psychic, and so I couldn't do a big hit on a Alolan Ninetales. So I don't think it's awful, but I just think Dragonair's better. It's more boring, but still pretty out there, really. And I think another nice thing to mention here is that the Charmers perhaps aren't going to be as popular. Like Wigglytuff is the Charmer that people tend to run, and because it's got that normal type in, it makes it difficult to run Wigglytuff if you want to run a Diggersby it makes it impossible to run Wigglytuff if you want to run a Diggersby or a Vigoroth. Will people go making Clefable just for this?
I mean, you mentioned it before, right? A Alolan Ninetales.
Yeah,
that will be really popular.
Yeah,
it looks like
it's become very strong with the Weather Ball. It was given in the new update.
It looks like it's definitely the most popular fairy type in practice tournaments by quite a long way. But the thing with the Alolan Ninetales is you don't know which Fastman people are running it with, so the actual Charm variant might be less popular.
Ah, right, yeah, for sure.
Although in this particular instance, it's bad news either way, I guess.
Yeah.
Although I would suggest Powder Snow is
probably worse actually with Powder Snow against Dragonair.
Yeah, it's better farming potential. But yeah, I think with the presence of Venusaur, I think we'll see the Powder Snow. But yeah, I don't think it's one of those cups where we will see a fairy on every team. And Steel types, I mean, Ferrothorn gives it a tough time, but with Aquatail you can power through Probopass. Registeel, I'm sure I remember seeing this in a while back that where you win the 2s versus Registeel, and it's not one of those like no. Fair, okay. You don't win the 2s versus Registeel. But you'll be running.
I only say it because it's right in front of me right now.
Oh right, okay, fair. So we're thinking along similar lines, I guess then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't Dragon?
I think it's wireless.
not in the cup. But doesn't it win? I have a feeling it wins the one-shot scenario against Bastion.
Yes, it does. Yeah. Yeah.
So that might be what you're thinking of the Register.
Yeah.
Because wireless does beat Registeel in the 2s. Pretty sure.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that was it. It was Violet beats Registeel. Lapras beats Dragonite beats Bastiodon. Yeah, I remember that one from Kingdom Cup way back. Well, that was a long time ago now. Yeah, I just think it's an interesting Dragon type. Possibly some play for in terms of having to spam that will struggle less with the water and grass types if you're looking for that sort of coverage. Possibly some play for Shelgon, although I think generally that's weaker overall. But
yeah, I think the fact that Shelgon's cheapest move is 55 energy, whereas Dragonaire's is 35, that just makes a huge difference between those.
Shelgon knows Twister.
Yeah, Twister was what I was thinking.
What's the energy cost of Twister? That's 45 energy, isn't it? It's still inferior to Aquatail.
It's an awful move.
It's a bad move, yeah.
But it's one that you can spam against the water and grass types a little bit more if you're thinking about it that way.
Realistically, it's Zweilous or Dragonair here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Dragonite if you feel a bit spicy.
I don't know. If you wanted to look,
Shadow Dragonite, yeah.
If you've got a Latios, I think that could be the way. But as I say, that's difficult to get hold of. Difficult to get hold of.
Its resistance, because it has the fighting resistance, and that's why you're interested in Latios.
Yeah.
It's Glacius, so does the resistance actually help that much?
Not at all. No, not at all.
Also, it's weak to Ghost and Dark, which are probably looking to be, like, along with normal, the core meta types, I would think.
So I looked into Latios about this as well. Ghost types, if we're thinking... So first, Sableye is the one, right? But if your opponent's got Sableye, that means they've only got one Ghost or Dark. They've not got two to worry about. If it's Marowak, that's doing resisted fire spin damage. So unless they bait with Bone Club and then land the Shadow Bone, you win the ones with Latios. And then you win twos either way. Jellicent is baity as well. Like, honestly, it's not that worried about the ghosts. I mean, Sableye and Drifblim, yeah, but it can power. Latios can power through Marowak and Jellicent if it has to.
Frostlass, I'm guessing.
I thought you were thinking of Dragonair, Matt.
Yeah, Dragonair's awesome too. I just wish I had a Latios. Yeah, Frostlass is an issue all round, yeah. Although I think Dragonair beats Frostlass in the wands because...
I could imagine.
Yeah, because Aquatail comes faster.
And if it can kill it before it gets to two avalanches, it might make it through.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and again, it, like Regirock, single type in, you're not taking another typing off the board, which can be, and certainly as like a sixth pick on your team. Like if you've got a few awkward gaps to fill, which is how I see Dragonair fitting onto a team. Really, I don't think it's anything people will build around. But if you happen to be a little bit weak to Stunfisk, Wishcash, it's a bit edgy versus iffy versus Wishcash, of course, because of Blizzard. But if you happen to be a bit weak to the grounds, a bit weak to perhaps the fires, or it can cover a lot of bases that way. And having that single type, it makes it fit into that sixth slot a lot easier than say something like Zweilous might do.
Keep that in mind. Yeah.
Cool. Any other thoughts on? Well, I guess on any of the dragons, because it's an interesting one, because Altaria is so we're so used to Altaria, the dragon, and yet it's just gone now. And
yeah,
I have a thought on Dragonair. It's frail. I don't want to use it. It's frail. You're giving your opponent shield advantage.
No, I've just given you a big list of things it beats in all evens.
I don't care.
Isn't it a similar sort of bulk to Swampert?
It's reverse Cradily.
Reverse grid.
Yeah,
I think it's like mixed sort of stats. It's not like it's sort of even stat distribution.
It's got the same bulk as Sableye, essentially, give or take.
Yeah, I think its stat distribution is mixed, so it's not like Toxicroak or Galvantula where they're attack heavy.
Yeah, I quite like those mons because they're good, and especially with something like Dragon Breath. They're what Leo and Ryan were saying about, well, Leo particularly about not being able to farm things down with
Predilly.
Yeah, with Predilly. This is something you could bring in and farm down and get to an Aqua Tail for the next thing, and then probably more likely it makes it easier to get to the Dragon Pulse, which is the sort of the big one, which is always a little bit underwhelming, to be fair. Dragon Pulse.
What about Return?
You could have Return instead.
I TM'd mine to Dragon Pulse after they nerfed it.
So did I actually, but I'm not sure if I regret it because Return is pretty decent.
I've got
Just use Wrap.
3 Dragonairs double moved. Like I've got a Shadow, I've got a Return and a Dragon Pulse.
Wow.
And I've got a really good IV one, which I'm looking at going for a 4th. One of them could maybe become an Ultra League Dragonite one day, perhaps. But
like your snakes.
Hmm?
You like your snakes?
I like the snakes.
Likes playing with his snake.
Mm-hmm. On that note.
Okay.
So there's always one. Andrew, have you decided what you were going to pick?
I've been thinking through my options during the thing so far, and I should have come up with something imaginative, but I haven't. So I think I'm gonna have to go with the most imaginative pick of all, which is Vigoroth.
Fair enough. Someone was going to take it.
The spice pick of the Labyrinth Cup.
Sell it to us.
What?
So I mean, Vigoroth. It's good generally, and this cup's kind of ideal for it because it's a single type, so it doesn't consume 2 slots from your team. The things that threaten Vigoroth, like several of the best fighters are banned. Machamp, Sirfetch'd, they're banned, and the ghosts, the most popular ghost in practice has been Marowak. And Driftblim and Frozos, which are harder Vigoroth counters, they both have quite competitive typings because Frozos is competing with Marowak itself, and then also Ninetales, Abomasnow. Driftblim's competing with all the flyers, which are generally quite popular in a sort of open style meta, and with Marowak itself. So Vigoroth's counters are kind of suppressed a bit in this format, or banned in the case of fighters, which makes it an incredibly safe option. If you look at the PvP switch, the switch rankings that assess Pokemon with +2 fast moves energy, it's at the top by quite a significant margin on the points thing. If you try to see its high counters, like if you look at it in the 1-0 shield scenario, its win rate is almost 99%. It's just an incredibly safe Pokemon, and I mean, we've seen it before in other metas where it's been safe, and this is just like any of those other metas. It's just a very powerful, very safe Pokemon that only uses one type in the team.
Ryan and I were talking about this the other night. Actually, about we've seen this before. Jungle Cup comes to mind, where it was that was the one with like Vespiquen.
That's where Vigoroth made its debut, I believe.
Yeah.
As holy shit, this Pokemon's good.
Mm. But a lot of the meta ended up working itself around that then, and it became not difficult to use because there's still very little reason not to use it, but it became far less good than it seemed on paper just because the way the meta developed. It had to. You had to bring Vigoroth counters, otherwise you would lose. Do you think there's any chance of that happening here? Like,
this is actually something I'll be interested to see, because in the practice, its hardest ghost counters, Marowak's it has a generally favourable matchup against Vigoroth, but it's a pretty bad, by ghost standards, matchup against Vigoroth. And the better ghost counters to Vigoroth, like Driftblim especially, or Frostbite, in practice tournaments, their usage has actually been quite low. and Vigoroth usage has been extremely high. So far, Vigoroth isn't having to face these sort of threats to its safety patrol, but it would definitely be interesting to see as the month goes on if they become more popular.
Fair. Yeah. Ryan, Leo, any thoughts on Vigoroth?
No, I mean, I think Vigoroth will be pretty much on like 90% of people's teams. I think the only people that are gonna use Diggersby are the ones that have them and be like, even if Vigoroth is potentially better for them, I feel they're gonna be like, oh, I need to show this off. I need to flex my grind and make me mad. But I feel like I mentioned before of this like the whole safe switch meta, and like are these Pokemon that are very neutral and do very well with energy and shield advantage. I think if you essentially build your team with like 6 of those Pokemon, like, you know, a Pokemon that can essentially kill any Pokemon with a shield or disadvantage, you know, it can always bulldoze, or it can always, you know, counter down or spam body slam even if it's resisted. Something like, you know, a Marowak with Shadow Ball or Sableye. If you just, I think, build a team of just like these neutral Pokemon, I think you'll be very good, especially Pokemon that are very how do I say this, that perform well. If it's gonna sound like a bit obvious, but if it's played well, I think it can do even better, if that kind of makes sense. Because I've been watching a lot of the Silph All-Star games, and I feel a lot of the like you know, the top players been using Vigoroth, have been using them like very well, you know, forcing the 2 shields against things like Pelipper and things you'd think you'll lose against because of the resistance, but yeah, so I feel it's going to be one of those Pokemons that will always do well and will always perform well if, you know, the player's good as well.
The Pelipper matchup is kind of an interesting example because Weatherball, I think, is a body slam clone. They both have stab on it. Then Wing Attack generates energy at the same speed as Counter. Obviously, Counter's resisted, but Counter does more damage as a move. So the fast move damage difference isn't actually that big between the 2 Pokemon. It's a closer matchup than you'd expect from a resisted matchup.
Counter's a very solid move. I think it's probably the best fast move in the game.
Oh yeah, no
outside
doubt.
Of
Shadow Claw.
Charm, yeah.
Shadow Claw is for me. Yeah, I love Shadow Claw.
Shadow Claw as well, actually.
I think as a test, I gave Blissey some like exceptional fast move combinations like Flying Press and Shadow Bone. And the 4 fast moves that had the highest win rate in all the leagues I tested were Counter, Shadow Claw, Volt Switch, and Lock On. Which, I mean, Lock On, whether Lock On's good or not kind of depends on the charge moves, because in some cases, like an extra energy per turn, it can be worth much more than extra damage per turn, because charge moves can convert into like 2 damage per energy, and they can be super effective and stuff like that. Whether Lock-on's good or not really depends on the Pokemon, but those seem like the 4 best fast moves.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, wouldn't have any arguments from me. Yeah. Interesting point that you raised, Leo, about picking like just 6 safe generalist things, because the temptation can be when building a team, and I guess this is just general now, I guess, rather than looking at this cup, which the name continues. I keep want to call it Tempest Cup, but obviously it's just not Tempest. Labyrinth Cup. The temptation when building a team is, I use the PvP team builder a lot, just when I'm coming up with my initial ideas, just to sort of gain a sort of rough idea of what things might pair well with. The initial temptation can be to look at the suggested mons and just pick those because they fill holes in your 6. And going about it that way is, as I say, when we talked about Regirock earlier, that's how I ended up with Probopass. So I think it's a real good point. Bear in mind how broad this meta is, and that sort of those try not to fall into that PV poke team building trap of going for these things, because Vigoroth is very rarely, in my experience, one of the things that pops up on that, because it doesn't hard counter every much. But
well, I think that's just another issue of just the PV poke system, is that it's all based around the one shield. It's like all the stats, the rankings are based around the one shield, whereas Vigoroth is like the 2 shield mon, so it's not gonna look at that. It's the same thing. It's the same thing with how Sableye got popularized in GB. Like a few months ago, no one was using Sableye, and now it's like one of the best safe switches. It's because of the whole return bait, how it can essentially kill an Umbreon and essentially kill an Azu. I feel like what you said there about filling holes using the PV poke thing, I think that just makes your team more into like an RPS fest, where it's like you're okay, now I have at least 2 or 3 Pokemon that cover that one typing that destroys the other 4 Pokemon in my team. But then if that situation occurs, you essentially have to win the lead or have to win switch. Whereas the idea that I was thinking, if you have 6 generalists, you don't really need to win. You need to try to get some sort of advantage, and then the rest of your team will do fine with the energy and shields, and you don't really. I mean, every Pokemon's gonna have a hard counter, absolutely. Sableye is gonna lose to Charmers, and Vigoroth is gonna lose to like other hard fighters like
Drifblims, that sort of thing.
Drifblims and Toxic.
Yeah, I think some of the ghosts are its hardest counters, and then they're followed by the focus. Yeah. Toxicroak can actually it can flip the 0 if it has +2 counters, I think. So if it gets two counters from the switch in, it can flip the 0 against Toxicroak. Because it reaches the I think in the 0. I can't remember if Toxicroak needs to get up or Massage Bomb in the 0, but basically Vigoroth reaches Bulldoze before it gets the.
Yeah, fair.
Probably Massage Bomb.
Did any of you use Drifblim in Sunrise?
I did.
Yeah,
I loved it.
A little bit.
That was good.
Then you know how good it feels to catch a Vig in Drifblim's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting. Obviously, if they're the last 2 Pokemon and Drifblim runs into Vigoroth, then it's just game over for the Vigoroth. But it's kind of interesting when the Vigoroth switches in, and then you switch in the Drifblim and they can't do anything to you. Because it's such a slow matchup, how it kills the Vigoroth. The Vigoroth can often build up energy and then switch back out again.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting. Yeah.
I was thinking of using Drifblim just because any Pokemon that hard counters it can fight back with Shadow Ball and essentially win 2 shield scenarios of Icy Wind as well, and it's gonna hard counter the Vigoroth that will be in every team probably, which will make people second guess whether they should bring Vigoroth or not. And it's one of those Pokemon that you could essentially, if you bait out the Vigoroth, you can just like farm it down, especially if you like lose switch with taking a shield, and then you just farm it down with like with a bunch of energy. That's really scary. I mean, they could have like an electric type or another ghost, but they're gonna have to probably use another shield, so it's very, very scary. So even though it takes both the ghost and flying, which is top tier real estate typings in this meta, I feel just for that sort of scenario or like strategy, I think it might be very worth using a Drifblim.
The difference between
that.
Oh, go on, sorry, after you. I was just gonna say the difference. Go on after you.
Yeah,
people.
So the point about if a Vigoroth is low on health, you can use Drifblim to build up a mass amount of energy off it. That was something I found really powerful in Sunrise Cup. If you could just get a Vigoroth switch locked and just lose to it, then you can just bring the Drifblim in and you can load up to 100 energy. Maybe you have to kill it with 1 Icy Wind or something, but
yeah, but the hexes
you can undercharge the Icy Wind and then finish it off with the hexes. You can if you're clever about it, you can often come up with 100 energy and not have taken that much damage, even if the Vigoroth's low on health, just by getting it switched off.
If you do farm it down like that, being like trying to get 100 energy, you'll be at like 30 to 40% health, because those body slams are just gonna add up. And Icy Wind doesn't do that much damage, and Vigoroth is quite tanky in that scenario. So even though you're like getting a huge shield and energy advantage, you're not really sitting with a lot of HP advantage.
Yeah, you can be. I mean, it depends on how much health the Vigoroth has, but you can be.
I think the thing for me about the Drifblim here is that the main reason I didn't use it in Sunrise was because Obstagoon was there, and Obstagoon is just so restrictive here. It takes up the normal and the dark, doesn't it? So
yeah,
I think that's a key difference personally. But yeah, I was an Obstagoon user back in Sunrise, so didn't have that problem or benefit, I guess.
I think you make a fair point, because another thing about the whole PV poke like tunnel vision is it doesn't factor in team, like your own team building. Like if you're gonna have X, Y, and Z Pokemon, you can't have those Pokemon, which means, you know, Drifblim, which is ranked like a 96, which sounds pretty bad, but given its typing and its moveset, sounds like it could, you know, it could do some damage. It could be very disruptive, but it's very, very dependent on, you know, the six Pokemon people bring in, and obviously the top ranked Pokemon are all normal and dark, which is probably why it's really bad. But you're only going to bring one of those, or, you know, a normal and a dark, you know. So
I think it has favourable matchups against. So Vigoroth's the most popular normal in practice, followed by Diggersby, and I think it has favourable matchups against both of them. So
no one's going to have Lickitung.
Lickitung would be much worse.
Yeah. What do you reckon to Drifblim, Ryan? Given that you've got this out, what do you reckon?
I've fallen in love with Mandibuzz, so I really want to run a ghost that can hard counter Vigoroth, which isn't, you know, Marowak doesn't really do the job there. But I like Mandibuzz too much to really be considering Drifblim, so that leaves you with Jellicent and Frostlass. Which
you can't use Sableye, which kind of counters Vigoroth as well.
Sableye is okay.
Sableye is sketchy, I think. It's not hard. Yeah.
I'd say it's worse than Marowak.
I think Jellicent's not that hard either. I remember Vigoroth, depending on the Jellicent's moveset, it can win the 2-shield scenario. Pretty like with Bates, obviously, but because I think Jellicent's problem is it's quite slow, and its charge moves is relying on Ice Beam, which does probably less than half. So I think Frostlass is like you got Drifblim as the hardest Vigoroth count, but then you got Frostlass, and then Jellicent's a bit lower down compared with those ones.
Yeah, still a step up from Marowak, I think. You know,
but it's not very common.
Yeah, I think it is.
In practice, so
it doesn't seem very common, does it? Maybe people holding out for a decent IV one, perhaps. Maybe.
And I find Jelly and Frostlass hard to build around in this. I keep coming back to Marowak, even though I'm not really satisfied with it.
That's interesting.
I think, given how popular the two ice types are, 9,000 and the Bomber Snow, that does make a case for Marowak.
Cool. Well, let's leave it there then. So even though you picked Vigoroth, Andrew, we've still got some nice Drifblim discussion in there. So that's
yeah. I should have gone for Drifblim instead.
Well, I'll stick a little Drifblim in the middle halfway through.
We can have Vigoroth slash
holding Drifblim.
Yeah, cool. God only knows what I'm going to do with Dragonair, Latias. But no, I think that was good. I think Vigoroth is one of those ones where sometimes you think there's not much to say about it because it's so simple, but actually the strategy around it is like I'd never thought about that whole energy, getting yourself locked in versus Drifblim, counting on the clock and switching out with 100 energy. That's something that just hadn't occurred to me, but there's lots of strategies there, I guess.
I noticed if I was Drifblim, came in against the switch locked Vigoroth, you don't want to be throwing Icy Winds as soon as you get them, because it will. If they're a smart player, they will switch out. And then your Drifblim has no energy for the next Pokemon that comes in. You usually want to get up to 100 energy, throw an Icy Wind, get up to 100, throw an Icy Wind.
Yeah.
And kill it that way, so that you've always got either a Shadow Ball or an Icy Wind to trap at the next Pokemon.
I mean, you resist all its moves as well, so it's not like you're that worried about reducing the damage. So
yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for joining me, guys. Really enjoyed that. Leo, I hope Cradley doesn't get too hard counted, mate. Yeah.
See,
And if it does,
I'll see how he does in the practice cup. If he does, I'll just switch him out to Regirock, and
there's
then
always Regirock.
I get to use Venusaur as well, or another grass type.
There you go. Right. Nice one, guys. Best of luck this month, and catch you all later.